Now let's start populating the properties for the components as per COBie specifications. So component properties are the individual instance properties that are assigned to every one of the elements. In this case, and for the current example, individual spaces. So if you take it from the IFC project manager, what you're going to see is upon selection of any of the spaces we have on the list, since we just have the spaces model here on the back, you'll see that there's a COBie space parameter set with the name room tag. Now that room tag parameter is active and it is connected to a value. Now, if you don't recall, let's refresh that. But effectively what that's doing is taking a mapping from the IFC translator, the COBie IFC translator, where the property mapping is having the IFC spaces having a property set called COBie space, a property called room tag that it's actually connected to an ArchiCAD property. So we need to worry about the ArchiCAD property, not typing in the property directly into the IFC project manager. So let's cancel this and let's move this away. Now under the property manager, you'll see if you go all the way down to COBie space, we have duplicated or mimic the same naming convention. You'll see that we have a room tag ArchiCAD property right there. It's a string or text, and it sits with a default value of non-applicable. Having a default value will ensure that all the elements will inherit that value. Now, the room tag currently sits like that because there is no standard for this project. And there are different ways in which we can populate that value, as you know now. Let's click on OK. So one way to add that will be simply by going to one of the spaces, or every one of in each of the spaces we have, going to the properties, and then finding that actual property set. If you don't find it, like in this case, it should be located under the structural analysis data, somewhere around there. It might be because of the classification. So let's double check the class on the lower roof. SL906072 roof surface spaces. And this should have been the same. Okay, it's not the same. That might be the reason why. So let's go and change it. And I'm going to match the one on the level 2. And let's search for SL_90_60_72. Like so. Let's pick that. And now we should have access to that property right there. Room tag, not available. Now, I do not want to disconnect this from the formula because I know that populating these values manually isn't an effective way or an efficient way of doing this. Instead, what I'll do is add a tag that is a formula. So let's go ahead and do that simply by going back to the ArchiCAD properties under options. And now by selecting the room tag, let's change that to an expression, which is going to bring this expression editor. And in here, we're going to concatenate a series of values. Let's say it's going to be the story, then the category, then the space number. So you could add all of those values simply by going to the parameters and properties and start looking for them. Let's say you want the story number. You'll find it right there. Now let's add right after that the category of the zone. So let's add the code. And then lastly, let's add the zone number. So that will be this related zone number, like so. And you'll see that even if we add those like that, we're going to get an error right there. Now, the problem with this error is a syntax error because this expression or formula-driven expression is expecting a string, and some of these values are actually numbers. So let's go ahead and change that simply by adding a command that is called under data conversion, which is called convert to string. So I'm going to convert to string a particular value, in this case, the home story. So let's get rid of this. And in parentheses, we're going to get just the zone number like that. And we're going to add just a comma and a 0, since we don't want any decimal places taken from the story number. Now, we're still having an error, and that's due to the fact that we need to concatenate these manually. So ArchiCAD will not understand, rather the expression editor will not understand that we actually want to add all these values manually. So what we'll need to do is go to the front of the expression and then add another formula from this button on the right. And this will be the concat or concatenate formula right here. Click on add, and it will give you an example right there, which we don't really need. I know that all we need is a separation of commas in between strings. So let's add one there and one parenthesis at the end. And let's add a separation of commas in between these values, like so. So now you can see how with this and this command, now we have a perfectly functioning formula that will concatenate the story number, the zone category code, and then the related zone number. Now, I also want to add a dash or underscore to this. So in order to do that, you need to add a quote or double quote symbol, and then an extra comma, just to make sure that it's considered one of those elements that need to be added to this. Like so. So with this, we should get an automated formula, an automated value without you having to type that in, if it can follow some logical code or naming convention like that. The number of the story, the category code, and then the related zone number or the number of the zone itself. Let's test this simply by clicking on OK. Actually, there's another way, but let's test it manually now. And let's select that area right there, that space. Let's go all the way to the properties. And let's double check what is the value here. Notice that it only states expression. So you need to click on the right-hand button just to make it display the actual value. So currently it's stating 10, 7, and 03, which is the code status for the story number, then the code of the space type, and then the actual number of that one space, 03 in that case. Let's check another one. And we should have something similar. In this case, it's 702, 72, and then 03. And now let's finalize this by checking the properties that are assigned to the types.